21st Platoon. Hard drop. Secure our landing zone.
Understood.
Over the target in 5.
Hang on to your helmet.
Alright, grunts. Welcome back to From ODST to Helldiver. Today we are going to go ahead and go over a couple of stratagems, and we're going to specifically focus on one type of stratagem today. So let's go ahead and dive on into it. Alright guys, we are on the loadout screen about to jump into a mission. Real quick, I just want to cover a couple of the stratagems that we are going to go over today. For today, we are going to specifically be covering the Orbital Strike Stratagems, and that is these first 12 offensive stratagems here. They are all a little different in behavior from the Eagle Airstrike offensive stratagems for a couple of reasons, but you can distinguish them very easily. They are all the stratagems that have the red dome followed by a white symbol of some kind indicating what type of strike they are. Now, all of these differ very, very differently from the Eagle airstrikes for a couple of reasons. One, the Eagle airstrike have multiple uses that they can use before the Eagle has to go and restock the salvo from your ship. And the Eagle will fly in from one direction, launch these attacks, and then take off in a straight line in general. The orbital stratagems here do not operate in that same way. Instead of having instant access to multiple uses, they have one use at a time before they immediately have to go on cooldown. But they are all fired from your ship, which is sitting in orbit. Very nice. You can actually see your ship where it's positioned when you're in game, which is actually very important when you're using these stratagems, because the missiles will come from your ship. So if you are on a map that has a bunch of cliffs, a bunch of rock formations, or in one of these super cities that has tall skyscrapers, just keep in mind that these will come directly from your ship in orbit to the location that you flag them at. And they can be blocked by cities or giant foliage from time, if you're in a swamp map for instance. They may not land exactly where you want them to. Just bear that all in mind. If you're going to use these stratagems, it's very, very useful to know where your ship is, so you know more or less where these are going to land. Now, all of these stratagems here have a call-in time and a cooldown time. The call-in time essentially is you throw your little grenade thing at where you want it to come in, and that's the amount of time it takes before the orbital strike actually takes effect. The cooldown time is how long until you get to use another one once you've thrown the stratagem down. We also have several other traits, and we will dive into those right now, and then I'll show you some live demos in game of all of these 12 different options. So the first 4 here, we're going to demo. I'll cover their stats right now. The Orbital Precision Strike has a call-in time of 3.45 seconds, cooldown of 77 seconds, and is anti-tank, which means it's capable of taking down the most heavily armored enemies in the game, as well as several objectives in the game. This is a single target kind of blast, so keep that in mind. It's very good for taking out a specific enemy. Occasionally you can get multiple things killed with it, but that is usually not the case. Usually it's a one thing and done. but that one thing can generally be anything in the game, which makes this very useful. Next up we have the Orbital Gatling Barrage. This will fire basically as a machine gun, a bunch of auto cannons. They are heavy armor penetration rather than anti-tank, so they do suffer a little bit against the most heavily armored enemies in the game, but can take down most things. They can also clear several objectives, though not every single one of them, and it has a 60-second cooldown, making it pretty decent. One of the shortest cooldowns of all these orbital strikes. And it also has sustained fire, I think, for several seconds. You'll see that in the demo in a little bit. Next up we have the Orbital Airburst Strike, which also has a salvo type of thing. It will fire for several seconds. It'll fire one missile that may be 50 feet in the air, spreads out in a cone of explosions. Now this is unfortunately medium armor pin, which means it is best against hordes of enemies, but most heavily armored things will survive these hits, but it can sustain fire in one area, which can be very good when you're being swarmed. It does have a cooldown of 86 seconds, which is fairly decent. It's an all-around generally okay thing. I do think there are better stratagems than it, but we'll dive into that a little later. Maybe you'll see it in the demo. Next up we have the Orbital Napalm Barrage, and this right here makes a lot of sense as a fire it in a certain area, leaves a fire trail where it hits, and lights everything in the area on fire. The cooldown is a massive 205 seconds, but it has sustained fire for 15 to 20 seconds, I think. It has a call-in time of 6.45 seconds and has unlimited uses. You'll notice so far everything we've mentioned has unlimited uses. This is a very, very good stratagem. Not much else I can say about it. It doesn't have an armor penetration to it, but generally everything can be lit on fire and sustain damage over time. Yeah. So that is the first four, and we will go ahead and hop into the game and go over these right now. Alright, so here we are in mission, and as you can see, when I pull up my list of stratagems, I have four distinct different things. First one is the Orbital Precision Strike, which is likely going to be your first orbital strike. I just have to input the code, which you can see at the top here is right up on the D-pad. And you can see in my hand I have a grenade type object, which I can then throw somewhere at some distance, and you can see it's now inbound, getting fired straight from my ship, and it generally blows up whatever it touches. And you can see here it has a decent radius, and you can probably also hear that the enemy patrol units on the map heard that explosion and are making their way over to investigate. Now, additionally, you can see the Orbital Precision Strike is now on cooldown, and it's going to take a couple of seconds, a little over a minute, to recharge. So that was the Orbital Precision Strike, very good at single target elimination. You can blow up buildings and objectives with it pretty easily. Next up, we have the Orbital Gatling Barrage, and I think I'll go ahead and use this to clear out the enemy patrol that I just saw. Let's get on our way first. See. Alright, tell you what, I'll just throw it and we'll see what it does. So this is the Orbital Gatling Barrage. You can see it is coming from my ship, and it is essentially firing heavy machine gun strikes with a little bit of explosive force for a sustained amount of time. And that is a fairly good amount of time followed by a decent cooldown of, it looked like, 40-something seconds. Next up, we have the Orbital Airburst Strike.
Orbital strike
Fire that over
incoming.
there. I'm going to take a little bit of time to step away. It is going to continuously attack. As you can see, something gets fired down and breaks apart into multiple pieces before detonating and exploding. Pretty decent, and now you can see the cooldown is a little over 1 minute before I get back. It's pretty good. You can see it's damaged the area pretty well, even digging into the terrain a little bit. Next up here, see we have right, down, left, right, and up the Orbital Napalm Barrage. Throw that over there.
Barrage incoming.
Coming in.
Stand clear.
And you're going to see fairly soon here, it's going to begin firing napalm all over the area in a pretty large area, actually, even almost close enough to hit me there. So this is one of those barrages that has a massive radius that it's going to hit. It's going to leave fire everywhere, usually killing just about anything that is there other than a flying type of enemy. This is very, very good at attacking enemies when they call in reinforcements. In general, it can wipe out whole waves of enemies, especially since it leaves fire on the ground that damages enemies as they walk over them. This is not, however, generally good at destroying buildings, as you probably noticed. Buildings are totally intact. The terrain is more or less intact as well, but it does leave a fire trail and wipe out enemies fairly good. It can also kill you and your teammates, so be careful of that. Very good with some fire-resistant armor and a fire build. Napalm airstrike. Very fun. Very good. The cooldown, however, as you can probably tell, is the big downside for the Napalm Barrage. The cooldown is, I think, over 3 minutes long. We can get back to the ship and double check the stats of those. I just wanted to show a couple of these different airstrikes here in game. We'll move on to the next 4 in just a moment. Okay, so we are back at the loadout screen, and I've selected the next 4 stratagems that we're going to test in game here in a second. First up is the Orbital 120mm HE Barrage. It has a pretty decent-ish cooldown of 154 seconds, almost 2.5 minutes. Call-in time of 6.45 seconds. It is anti-tank, and as a barrage, it has a very large sustained duration. It's going to last for quite some time, and this is the little brother of the 380mm HE Barrage. It has smaller explosive radiuses, though it's still anti-tank, and a smaller cooldown, and it's also generally more well contained to a small area. The 380mm barrage that we have here has a cooldown of 205 seconds, well over 3 minutes. The call-in time of 7.45 seconds, is also anti-tank, has a similar, though maybe longer duration than its little brother of the 120mm. The explosive radius of each missile that gets fired is much bigger, and the area that this will target is also much larger. Both of these function very similar to each other, though this one is more targeted to a specific area, whereas this one has a much larger area and is much easier to kill you and your teammates. The next one up that we have here is the Orbital Walking Barrage. It has a cooldown of 205 seconds, a call-in time of 4.45 seconds, is also anti-tank, and has a large duration, maybe 10 to 15 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. And essentially what this does is you throw the little grenade type object somewhere, and then it will begin a barrage walking in a straight line, maybe 150 to 200 feet in a specific direction, and it will focus wherever it can do the maximum amount of damage, focusing on heavy targets rather than smaller targets. This is a very, very good barrage. It's going to be one of those barrages you can throw at an objective just a little bit off from it and trust that it's going to take care of business and wipe out generally everything in a straight line. You may have some extra cleanup to do afterwards, but in general, this is a great option to just throw at something and hope it dies. Speaking of which, we have the Orbital Rail Cannon Strike. Now, this has a cooldown time of 3 minutes, 180 seconds. It has unlimited uses and has a call-in time of 0 seconds, which is a bit of a misnomer. This is a single target attack, and it does suffer from a 3-minute cooldown, but it is anti-tank, meaning it is capable of taking out literally any enemy in the game or objective. And the best part about this is it has a proximity beacon that automatically targets the biggest enemy in the area. So you can throw this kind of anywhere you'd like, and within a decent, maybe 25 to 50 foot radius, it will find the biggest target available and ensure that it hits it. So this is fantastic. This is actually really good. I hope that the cooldown will eventually get lowered a little bit. 3 minutes is kind of rough, but this is one of the most fun ordnance you can call it. Definitely one of the best stratagems. Alright, so that is it for these 4. We're going to go ahead and cut to game now, where I'm going to show some of these. Alright, so we're in game now, and as you can see, I have my ordinances here. The first one that we are going to look at is the 120mm HE barrage, which is right, down, left, right, and down. And I'm going to go ahead and fire it actually right there. It's going to take a little over 6 seconds to come in. And it's coming from there. And you can already tell there's a bit of an interesting issue is that it has a decent radius and it doesn't care to hit me. It's going to try its best to kill everything around, including myself. It's going to fire several things. It is luring those enemies over and actually didn't manage to kill them because the time out, which is fine. I'm going to go ahead and use the walking barrage and see if I can get these guys dead. It is right down, right down, right down. We're going to fire it off up there. This is a unique barrage as it fires very similar to the 120 HE barrage, except it is going to proceed in a straight line. It's kind of hard to see that here. But it is going to follow a straight line. You can see it's totally safe for me to stand where it initially started at, as it is making its way over there. From my experience playing with this, it tends to find wherever the either major objective is or the most populated area and tries to make its way over there. This is very good for closing objectives. If you throw this in the vicinity of an objective, it will eventually make its way over that area. The range seems to be decent enough. I would still throw this relatively close to the thing you're trying to hit, but allow it breathing room to make its way over. If that makes any sense at all. Hopefully it does. Walking Barrage has a massive cooldown, especially compared to the 120. But next up, we'll cover the massive 380mm HE Barrage, which is right, down, up, left, down, down. I'm going to throw it over there, and then I'm going to run as far away as possible.
Incoming. Stand clear.
It is absolutely massive, the radius this thing has, and the explosions it fires off. This is one of those things where when someone calls it in, everyone else runs or dies. It is a huge destructive force. It's relatively good at clearing swarms of bugs. It is by no means the best to take out specific bugs, but it is very good clearing objectives, entire camps, or entire bug nests. It can very easily take out. It's very good at that. Just clear some of those. Come on. That's what I thought. Okay, so that was the 380 HE Barrage. It has a pretty decent cooldown as well. Pretty hefty. And next up, we have the Orbital Rail Cannon Strike. Now, this you might think is very similar to the regular Orbital Strike. Let's see here. This is, for you Halo fans, probably the closest thing we have to a Mac Blast.
Orbital strike incoming.
Boom. It is going to, in general, take something out pretty good. Now, what you didn't see there was the coolest feature about the Rail Cannon Strike. It actually has targeting capabilities where when you throw it, it is going to find the biggest target and try to kill them dead. So I will cut to that now. Okay, so we have the cooldown back down and a couple of enemies here to mess around with. So I'm going to call the Orbital Rail Cannon Strike in, and we're going to see its auto-locking features. Now, if I throw it over here, you're going to see it points to the largest enemy that it can, and it's to shoot it. It will, in general, one-shot just about any enemy that you seek it on, and it's going to prioritize the biggest enemies that it can see. So it is very, very powerful. It's especially good when you have a build where you can't take down specific types of enemies. Perhaps you're doing, I don't know, a melee build, and you don't have anything to take down Bile Titans or Chargers with, perhaps. You can always call this in, and it will auto take those things out for you, which is very, very nice. Unfortunately, it suffers from having an almost 3-minute long cooldown, which is a little unfortunate compared to the regular Orbital Strike, but you don't have to worry about aiming it, which makes it particularly very good against fast-moving heavy targets like the Chargers. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the last 4 stratagems I'm going to cover for this video. Alright guys, we are back at the loadout screen here, and we have the next 4 offensive stratagems that we're going to cover for this video, and actually the last 4. So first up here, we have the Orbital Laser. Now it has a massive cooldown of 257 seconds, which is well over 4 minutes long. It has a call-in time of 1 second, and it is unique in the sense that it is the only orbital strike stratagem that has a limit of 3 uses. Now, the cooldown here and the limited number of uses may scare some of you off from using this orbital laser, but those limitations are in place because it's one of the absolute best stratagems in the game, bar none. Essentially, it calls a gigantic, massive anti-tank laser beam from your ship in orbit, and it annihilates everything in its path. It automatically seeks its targets out and begins firing them all over the place. If you are a fan of Halo Wars, the original Halo Wars, and you really liked the Prophet's laser beam attack, his little ultimate ability, this is essentially that. It is so fun to use in practice, and it's one of those things you can fire it off and just let it do its business while it rains fire for a sustained maybe 20 or 25 seconds and kill everything in its path. Next up, we have the Orbital EMS Strike, which has a cooldown of 64 seconds, has a call-in time of 3.45 seconds, and is also fairly unique in the sense that it actually doesn't do any damage whatsoever, but instead temporarily stuns and slows down all enemies in a massive radius. This is very useful if you are doing a melee build. Stunned and slowed enemies are much easier to chop up than raging enemies that can fight back. Next up, we have the Orbital Gas Strike, which has a cooldown of 64 seconds, a call-in time of 3.45 seconds, and calls in a giant bubble of gas that can both blind and confuse any enemies in your path. This is a fantastic option, especially if your build revolves around damage over time, maybe gas, maybe fire, maybe both. A very, very good stratagem. And then last but not least is the Orbital Smoke Strike. This has a cooldown of 86 seconds and a call-in time of 3.45 seconds, has unlimited uses, and also, similar to the EMS Strike, actually doesn't do any damage, but instead, very similar to the Gas Strike, calls in a massive cloud of smoke. Now this doesn't damage anything, but it will keep enemies from being able to see through the smoke, or see into the smoke, or see out of the smoke. So you can call it in on yourself to remain invisible. I do recommend running away because it does make noise there and enemies will be drawn to it because of the noise it makes. You can also fire this on a path that you are going to go through eventually. It can help you and your teammates avoid fire, especially against the automatons, where this is the most effective. And you can also fire this on enemies and keep an entire area of the battlefield blind to everything else that your team is doing. This is very, very good for stealth missions. Alright, let's go ahead and dive into the game and see these in action. Alright, so we're in game here, and I'm going to start this off with actually the Smoke Strike. So if we call this in, it's there, you can see it's going to come in from our ship there and hit. As you can see, when you're in the smoke, you can't see too far in any direction. Mileage may vary from time to time, but essentially it calls in this heavy smoke, which is going to blind enemies and keep them off your tail. Nothing can see through the smoke, which is very, very helpful. Stealthy getaways, very fun to use, definitely specialized. Sometimes it is a little hard to justify a smoke strike over something that can blow up generally everything in its path. So it is very specialized, but it is definitely good. It definitely helps with a specific playstyle. Now, as we move a little bit over here, I need to see some enemies before I commit too much, but let's go ahead and get this orbital laser over here. We have an objective to destroy that tower. And I think I'm going to go ahead and use the orbital laser to not just kill that, but kill the enemies there. And you guys can see the absolute destructive force of the laser. It is going to kill everything in its path, no questions asked. I did miss this guy, focused on the bigger targets. The range for where the laser sees things is not fantastic, but it did realize there were enemies spawning in, and it took care of business over there. Now, unfortunately, these guys spawned in, and the laser's already gone. A little unfortunate, but the laser's very good. It also leaves a fire trail behind, which can light you on fire by accident if you walk over it. So keep that in mind. Be very cautious about where you're walking after the orbital laser shows up. It is a heat-based laser weapon. Next up, I'm going to talk about the orbital EMS strike. We will fire it. Get a little bit in here so he's coming at me.
Deploying non-lethal payload.
Note it said non-lethal payload, and now these guys are stunned. Since they're stunned, they aren't going to be able to fight back as I start making my way through and hacking and slashing them. Now, I myself am also slowed here, which is the downside of EMS, but man, did it make it really easy to kill things with a melee weapon. And last up, we're going to test out the gas strike. There. And then run away. Because the gas is strong. See, there's a giant thing of gas there. They are blind and going crazy trying to find me. And it killed generally everything in its path as well. Now these are lighter enemies, so it's much easier for gas to kill them. As you progress in difficulty and you go against stronger, heavily armored enemies, the gas is still going to damage heavily armored enemies, but they have a much larger health pool in general, and so the gas strike itself is not going to kill those enemies, but it will make it very easy for you to pick them off while they are both blind and confused. Now, one more thing to note is if you combine both the EMS strike and the gas strike, the enemies will be stunned and stuck in the gas, which in fact is very, very effective, as you can imagine. It is one of the greatest combos you can do in this game, keep them stuck inside of gas. Okay, that is those 4 stratagems, and I'm going to see you guys back on the ship. Alright guys, that wraps up our initial dive into stratagems covering the orbital strike stratagems. We covered 12 of them today. Next video, we are going to go ahead and cover the Eagle airstrikes. And I will see you guys then. Good luck out there. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of From ODST to Helldiver. If you found any of the information in this video useful, please go ahead and leave a like. And if you have any questions about anything, you want some clarification, or maybe you want to sync up in-game, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and maybe I can add you. We can get a couple of games together. And if you want to see a couple of more videos like this, why don't you go ahead and subscribe. That would really, really be appreciated. And hopefully this video gets you guys a little bit more prepared for when this inevitably drops on the Xbox. I hope everybody watching sees so many similarities between the Helldivers and the ODSTs. They're pretty much doing all of the same things. And I do find this game is, without a doubt, one of the greatest Halo games in the last 10 years. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.